In this video, let us discuss the while loop. So if you want to execute a certain number of statements as long as the given condition is true, in that case you can use the while loop, because while loop executes a certain number of statements as long as the condition is true. If the condition becomes false, then it stops executing and it goes out of the while loop. Let us discuss the syntax to understand this further. So we use the while keyword and then we have the expression. If the expression becomes true, we will execute a certain number of statements. That is, it can be a print statement or it can be another operation. So it can be any number of statements, statement 1, statement 2, and then again we check the expression. If the expression again becomes true, again it will follow the same statements, statement 1, statement 2. Then we check the statement. If the statement becomes false, it stops executing and comes out of the while loop. This is the syntax of the while. Let us see the flow chart to understand this further. First, you will check the condition. If the condition becomes true, you will execute the conditional code, that is the statements. Again, after you execute the statements, again you will check the condition. The condition against true, you follow the same procedure. The loop will continue until if the condition becomes false. If the condition becomes false, then the while loop ends. It comes out of the while loop. Let us see an examples to understand this while loop concept better. Suppose we have a count variable is equal to 0. So we want to execute or print high message until the count variable becomes 6. If the count variable becomes 6, we will end the while loop. So while count less than 6, this condition true means print the high message. Don't forget to increment the count variable, otherwise it will become an infinite loop. The loop will not end. Increase the count variable by 1. So let's save this and run now. As you can see, it prints 6 times. After the count value becomes 6, it will again check the expression here, that is 6 less than 6. If the condition false, then it comes out of the while loop and stops printing. So let's print a condition additional message here, while loop ends, and also provide a count value so that you can see what are the numbers. As you can see, this is high 0, high 1, high 2 and high 3 up to high 5. Count 5, we will increment the value by 1. Here count value is 5. If we increment the value by 1, it will become 6. Again it will go to the condition 6 less than 6. It becomes false. It comes out of the while loop. This is the example number 1. Let us see another example. Here in this example, we want to continuously ask the user for the input as long as he presses the Q. If he press the Q, then the program should end. So let us do that. So let's take the input from the user. So input string equal to input, enter input. So let's take a input. Then as long as the input string not equal to Q, we will continuously ask the user for the input. So input of enter input. If it becomes Q, then it will stop executing and ends the program. So let's print message that the while loop ends. So let's save this and run now. So for the input, let's give something. So let's print high here, high. Again it asks for the input. This time let's give hello. As you can see, it will continuously ask for our input until we press Q. If we press Q, the while loop ends. This is the concept of while loop. It executes the statement as long as the given expression is true. If the expression becomes false, it stops the loop. Here in the previous example, so if you consider the previous example here, this is what we have in the previous example. Here you increment the count by 1. If you forget to increment the count 1, then it becomes an infinite loop. As you can see, the count is 0. It will print infinitely. So if you stop this, just press Ctrl C. So if you forget to increment the count variable, it will go into the infinite loop. This is the one kind of problem in while loop. So always make a condition so that it will end after a certain amount of statements. If you want to display a message after the while loop ends, you can display the message inside the else block. So else of inside this, just print the while loop ends. After that, you can normally do the other statements that you would do after the while loop. So if you run this now, as you can see, displays while loop ends. Here the other statements you have, other statements. So let's save this and run now. As you can see, the other statements. So let me give you a brief difference between the while loop and for loop. In the for loop, you will iterate over the sequence. The sequence can be list, tuple, or a string. You will first get the first item from the list and execute a certain number of statements for that item as long as there is an item in the list. If the list becomes empty or if there is no more elements to pick from, then the for loop will end. On the other hand, while loop will execute the statements as long as the condition is true. If the condition becomes false, the loop gets end. So this is the difference between the for loop and while loop. In the next video, we will see the jump statements in looping.